Thanks, Rob. And I'm going to have you introduce me every morning to my family too, by the way. That was rousing. So a lot of talk about telemedicine. I thought I would just kind of share a little bit about what we're seeing and to give you context for our business. We license our virtual care technology to healthcare providers around the country, and that ranges from the big hospital systems to smaller independent practices, including surgical and orthopedic practices. The majority of the business is largely in primary care, although we've now got sort of the whole continuum of care from sleep to travel medicine to post-surgical for bariatric, orthopedics, et cetera, et cetera. So it runs a big gamut of conditions that we're treating. So a couple data points that I'd share with you guys, and I think you're seeing this firsthand, and if I'm hearing sort of from each of you, we saw an almost 4,000% increase in utilization last month across the network. It's an absolutely astronomical number. And obviously it's been good for business for us, but I think it's also been a lot of pent-up demand, to be honest. And so what we're looking at then is majority of that is COVID related, right? Those are patients that are coming to the health systems and using virtual care to be screened or treated for potential COVID. So we've been looking very closely at the non-COVID procedures that are going on. And I can tell you that for everything else, right, if you take all the upper respiratory conditions out, that volume has increased about fivefold in and of itself. And I think what this means for the industry, and as you guys are thinking about technology decisions, you're thinking about how real is it? Are these just little band-aids that you need to put out there? And then, Robin, I appreciate the data on, maybe by Q4, it's kind of business as usual. What we're seeing across the country, and I've been at the federal level across the states, is that this is starting to become a lot more baked into just the regular practice. And a couple of things that I would share with you. The state regulations, from HIPAA, I think, Scott, you were mentioning that HIPAA will be back. Yeah, so if you're using sort of a Band-Aid solution, it's, these guys are either gonna have to upgrade their platforms or you're gonna need to move to something that is a little bit more industry grade. Although that's been very good in sort of helping this initial onslaught, the regulations have changed pretty dramatically across the state lines to open up. And honestly, it was probably 20 years regressive. And we've kind of fast forwarded it in about 4 weeks, a lot of the changes that should have happened. So I see it being really tricky at a state by state level for all of those to get rolled back because COVID isn't going away. And just to give you that perspective, it's going to be here. You're going to need to maintain all these kind of things. So if there was a sharp cliff that we could all see, I think you would have a higher probability of those regulations moving back to where they were pre-COVID. But I don't see that. The other thing that's driving that is pretty aggressive reimbursement. So moving reimbursement for, especially in home care, Medicare, Medicaid, to have almost parity. I don't see parity lasting forever. I think that's a little bit temporary. But it went from over here for telemedicine to parity. I think you'll probably end up kind of back a little bit. Where a lot of the virtual encounters will continue to be reimbursed, probably not the same as an in-person clinic visit, but there'll certainly be better reimbursement for virtual, which gets into your world, which is a lot about orthopedics, bundle payments, how is this gonna have an impact? And I think what we're seeing is that, first of all, there's two sort of primary use cases, and you guys have hit on those. One is, how are you just connecting with patients today? And that's just a vital necessity, either someone you're actively managing or potentially patients that you want to be able to connect with and just communicate. So that's certainly a starting point. We're seeing more sophisticated modes where as you start to pick up procedures again, how can you outsource or offload 1 or 2 follow-up visits post-surgery for active monitoring? And there's a lot of good data and I think a lot of good evidence out there that well-managed patients, healthy patients, generally healthy patients can effectively use virtual care for some of the simple follow-up. And, you can do video, and if you do a Lockman's or range of motion, I mean, there's things you can do virtually that don't always need to be in place, especially for med management and the whatnot. So that's what we're seeing. Our systems, our network touches every American. We screened and treated about 1 million last month alone. Which we don't have the name and cachet that a Teladoc or others do, but we did about 3 times the volume they did across our network. So we've got a really good perspective that's out there. And I'm trying to be as transparent as I can about sharing data, what we're seeing, what's working, what's not working, et cetera, because I think there's a lot of uncertainty about, is telemedicine viable? Can you use, these platforms? Is it Zoom? I get it. It's still sort of early days, but I hope for this group, and certainly as you guys are considering the role of virtual care within your practice, know that there are very robust systems out there. You've heard a few. I don't know them, but I'm sure if they've been in market for a couple of years, they're HIPAA compliant and catered to you, they're going to be just fine as you think about the short-term solution. But I'd really encourage you to think strongly about how you integrate this into practice, because I don't think we're going to go back to the dark ages of where we were, even six weeks ago.
And probably the key question is, if you do integrate it in your practice, how can you maximize its revenue producing capabilities?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So we really focused around clinical efficiency. I think looking for solutions that make either offload work to non-surgeons, right? And how can you do some of the basic history collecting, medication management? What we do off of the hypnosis platform is we basically outsource it to a really smart computer system. So you can take our average work time, by the way, is about 89 seconds across all of those visits. So we're really getting rid of that administrative burden on clinicians. So that means that your cost point is going down for anything you need to do virtually. And that's the first place you should start. How do you make it as efficient as possible? And then I think secondly, specific to orthopedics, I'd look at how you're leveraging virtual care within, if you're in a bundled payment environment, look at how you can maximize the revenue out of that. And there are some very clear pathways that are there. And then again, I think the reimbursement that you're seeing by adopting virtual or telemedicine is very, very positive for you guys. And if you're not facile with that, I would encourage you to look at how you can change some of your practice behavior to sort of leverage that efficiency, but still get paid effectively the same on some of these codes.